Pato arrived in Italy from Brazilian club Internazionale after being touted as the most exciting young player in world football. He has excellent speed and quick feet, but his initial promise faded after he suffered the same muscle injury 3 times in 12 months. Unfortunately, the club's medical team could not diagnose the cause of Pato's problem. In his last 2 seasons at Milan, he only managed to score 1 league goal in 15 appearances. That was enough to persuade Milan to cut their losses and offload him to Sao Paulo. Pato is still young for a striker and has not yet reached his peak. Can he return to his best in China? In August 2009, the sale of Xabi Alonso to Real Madrid left a huge hole in Liverpool's midfield. Manager Rafa Benitez brought in Alberto Aquilani for £17 million RP, $321 billion, to fill the hole. The Italian has arrived with a great reputation since arriving in Serie A, but recruiting injured players always carries risks. That meant Aquilani could never adapt to the team. He increasingly lost performance and confidence due to further injuries. That fact restricted him to just 26 appearances before being sent back to Italy on loan. Jack Rodwell has shown tremendous promise after he emerged with Everton in 2008. He even made the England squad and clearly has a bright future with club and country. In 2012, his extraordinary talent convinced Manchester City to pay £15 million RP, $284 billion, for him. However, his short career at Man City was marred by nagging injuries. He couldn't have a decent run of games to justify his price tag, thanks in part to the star players the manager had at his disposal. He made just 16 league appearances in his 2 years there before being sold to Sunderland. It places him in a long line of young English players who have made big money on the move rather than playing regular football and ruining their careers. Manchester United spent £20 million RP, $378 billion, to sign Brazilian playmaker Anderson from Porto after Sir Alex Ferguson believed he would become one of the best attacking midfielders in the world.
Ever since my girl left me, my whole life came crashing. Mr.
Another foreign import that came to England with a great reputation was Verona. Sir Alex Ferguson made him the most expensive transfer in English football when he shelled
Pra
out
começar o final de semana, no traje vou ter que tá chique bacana. Forte, forte, se não sai de lagote. Não sei se vou usar o lacinho ou campana. E o crocodilo estampado no peito chama atenção e o que te impressiona. Versão live, uma em o peito só cabe o jaca. Com ele tem o contrato vitalício lá roteiro que manda.
Because of this, Verona only spent 1 season at Stamford Bridge before being sent back to Italy.
It's on the way. Verona, who has been a wonderful provider for them this afternoon, freeing back
Robinho was a rising star in Brazil and moved to Real Madrid when he was just 19 years old. He established himself as a first-team regular before being lured to Manchester City, which had recently been taken over by an Arabian prince. The Brazilian has the ability to charm and frustrate at the same time. His attitude problems resulted in him clashing with both managers who coached him. He also struggled to adapt to life in Manchester, calling it a terrible place to live. Problems off the field meant that Robinho only played 53 matches for Manchester City and scored 16 goals. Unable to settle in Manchester, He was loaned to Santos before making a permanent move to AC Milan. Andriy Shevchenko was perhaps the most feared marksman in Europe when he arrived at Stamford Bridge in 2006. Chelsea's £30 million (RP, 568 billion) outlay made him the most expensive player bought by an English club at the time. Despite scoring a goal in his debut match, Shevchenko appeared to be just a shadow of his former game at AC Milan. In 2 years in England, he didn't even manage to score double figures in the league. It's hard to believe that this is the same player who scored goals for Milan and previously at Dynamo Kyiv. There is talk that he was bought by Jose Mourinho because he was forced by Roman Abramovich, which is why he is not liked by the manager. The player from Ukraine was loaned back to Milan and finally ended his career at Dynamo Kyiv. His fate at Chelsea was a sad sight for all their fans who had high hopes when he signed for the club. With full coffers after the £50 million (RP, 946 billion) sale of Fernando Torres to Chelsea, Liverpool decided to bring in Andy Carroll as his replacement. Carroll was considered one of the best young players in England, so Liverpool spent £35 million (RP, 662 billion) on his services, making him the most expensive English player at that time. That puts a lot of pressure on a player who is only 22 years old. Unable to cope with the pressure, he scored just 6 league goals in 3 full seasons at Anfield. A change of manager didn't help, as Brendan Rodgers preferred a more mobile striker to a target man like Carroll. He was then loaned to West Ham, where he later signed on a permanent basis. In the summer of 2009, Ricardo Kaká signed with Real Madrid in a €65 million (RP, 1.02 trillion) deal. His signing marked the start of the second Galacticos era at the club. The Brazilian was voted world player, seemed like a perfect fit, one of the best players in the world joining one of the best clubs in the world. But, to everyone's surprise, he couldn't get his game back. We saw glimpses of it, but Kaká couldn't maintain consistency in his performances. His hefty price tag put him under immense pressure to perform, and his constant injuries only added to that burden. Madrid were so desperate to get rid of him, that they let him go to Milan on a free transfer. From being a 20-goal-a-season striker to a striker who only scored 20 league goals in 4 years. This happened after the former Liverpool star moved to Chelsea in 2011 for a British transfer record at that time of £50 million (RP, 946 billion). He was bought when he was at the peak of his prowess. But the pressure of its huge price tag was too much. He doesn't look like the player who terrorized defenders just 1 season ago. He scored 1 league goal in Lyon on loan. Just like that, another top striker was added to Chelsea's striker graveyard.